My son called me a burden while I sat on a plastic chair in his garage, holding the lottery ticket worth $33 million tucked safely inside my purse. He slammed his hand on the workbench and told me to stop being so needy. That's when I decided to disappear completely, to let them all think I'd lost everything. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. But first, let me take you back to how I ended up sitting in that cold garage, feeling like some unwanted piece of furniture. It was a Tuesday morning in October when I bought that ticket at Murphy's Corner Store. Same place I'd gone every week for the past 15 years. Helen Murphy smiled as she handed me my usual Powerball ticket. With my late husband's birthday numbers, feeling lucky today, Carol? She asked. I laughed and said what I always said. If I win, you'll be the first to know. 3 days later, I was alone in my kitchen when the numbers were announced. I checked once, then twice, and had to sit down because my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the ticket. Every single number matched. $33 million. After taxes, still more money than I'd ever dreamed of seeing. My first instinct was to call my son, Michael, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the way he'd been treating me lately, always impatient, always acting like I was some kind of inconvenience. Or maybe it was how my daughter, Jennifer, kept pushing me to sell the house and move into one of those active senior communities. As if being 67 made me ancient. I folded the ticket carefully and slipped it into my purse. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to tell anyone. Not yet. First, I wanted to see how my family really felt about me when they thought I had nothing left to give. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. That same week, my property tax bill arrived, higher than usual because of the new assessment. Normally, I'd just adjust my budget and make it work, but this time, I had a better idea. I called Michael and asked if I could borrow $2,000. $2,000? His voice instantly turned cold. Mom, what did you spend your money on this time? The property taxes came in higher than expected, I said. I just need help covering the difference until next month. There was a long pause. Mom, you can't keep living beyond your means. Maybe it's time to seriously consider downsizing. I pressed on, making my voice smaller, more desperate. I hate to ask, but I don't know what else to do. Could you help me just this once? Let me talk to Sarah about it. We'll get back to you. He did in single quotes. After 3 days of silence, I called Jennifer. Her response was even worse. Mom, Michael told me about the tax situation. Honestly, we've been worried about your financial management for a while now. Maybe this is a wake-up call. I'm not asking for charity, I said quietly. Just a temporary loan, but it's never temporary, is it? She shot back. There's always something, the roof, the furnace, now taxes. You're hemorrhaging money on that house. That weekend, Michael finally called. Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over Sunday afternoon? Standing in his driveway that Sunday, looking at his perfect house with its perfect landscaping, I wondered what kind of test I'd really designed for myself that afternoon. I sat in Michael's pristine living room while he and Sarah exchanged meaningful glances. Their house was gorgeous, the kind of place you'd see in magazines. Marble countertops, custom cabinets. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was begging for $2. Zero while sitting in a room that probably cost them $200,000 in renovations. Mom, Michael began, using that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. We're concerned about you. Sarah nodded sympathetically. We've been talking, and we think you're in denial about your financial situation. I gripped my purse tighter, feeling the lottery ticket inside. What do you mean? The constant money problems, Michael said. First it was the roof repair, then the heating system, now taxes. You're obviously living beyond your means. I wanted to laugh. If only they knew I was sitting on enough money to buy their house 3 times over. Instead, I made my voice smaller. I've managed fine for 40 years in that house. That's just it. Mom, Michael said. You haven't been managing fine. You've been struggling, and it's only going to get worse as you get older. Sarah leaned forward, her face full of practiced concern. We've been looking at some wonderful senior living communities. Places where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or property taxes or any of that stress. You want me to sell my home? I asked quietly. The house where I raised my children, where Tom and I were happy for 35 years before cancer took him. We want you to be realistic, Michael said firmly. You're 67 years old. How much longer can you really handle a 4-bedroom house with that big yard? I studied my son's face, searching for any trace of the little boy who used to build blanket forts in that same living room. But all I saw now was impatience and something that looked disturbingly like calculation. What about the $2,000 for taxes? I asked softly. Michael and Sarah exchanged another look. Mom, we can't keep enabling your poor financial decisions, Michael said. If we bail you out now, you'll just end up in the same situation again next year. So, you won't help me? We're trying to help you in the long run, Sarah said sweetly. Sometimes tough love is what's needed. I sat there for a moment, absorbing the full weight of their rejection. My own son, the one I'd supported through college, babysat for every weekend when his kids were small. The same son I'd helped with the down payment on this very house was refusing to lend me $2,000. I understand, I finally said, standing up. I should go. Mom, don't be like this, Michael said. But he didn't move to stop me as I walked to the door. Driving home, I made another decision. I was going to take this test further. I wanted to see just how far my family's concern for my well-being would go. When they thought I was truly desperate, the next morning, I called Jennifer and told her that Michael couldn't help with the taxes. Her response was swift and brutal. Well, maybe this is exactly the wake-up call you need. Mom, you can't expect us to keep rescuing you from your own poor choices. That afternoon, I drove to Murphy's Corner store and quietly arranged to claim the winning ticket through a trust, keeping my name out of the public records for now. The money would be there whenever I needed it. But first, I had more testing to do. The next 3 weeks felt like watching a nature documentary about vultures circling wounded prey. Word spread quickly through the family that I was having financial difficulties, and suddenly, everyone had an opinion about what I should do with my life. My sister-in-law, Patricia, called to suggest a charming little studio apartment in her building. It's perfect for someone in your situation, Carol, very affordable. And you wouldn't have all that house maintenance to worry about. My nephew David stopped by unexpectedly, offering to help me organize my affairs. He spent an uncomfortable hour asking probing questions about my savings account and whether I'd considered getting a reverse mortgage, but it was the family dinner at Jennifer's house that really opened my eyes to how they saw me. She'd invited everyone. Michael and Sarah, her husband Greg, even my brother Robert and his wife. Supposedly, it was to celebrate Greg's promotion. But I soon realized I was the main course. So, Mom, Jennifer said as she served dessert, have you given any more thought to what we discussed about downsizing? All conversation stopped. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. Expressions ranging from pity to barely concealed annoyance. I'm still considering my options. I said carefully, what options? Sarah asked with a little laugh. You can't afford the taxes on that house. Maybe it's time to face reality, Robert chimed in. You're not getting any younger and that house is just going to become more of a burden. There it was again, that word, burden, like I was some kind of dead weight dragging everyone down. The market's still good, Greg added helpfully. You could probably get a decent price if you list soon. Before winter sets in and things slow down, I looked around the table at my children, my brother, the people I'd loved and supported and sacrificed for, and realized they were all relieved that my supposed financial crisis had finally given them permission to say what they'd apparently been thinking all along, that I was too much trouble, too expensive, too inconvenient to keep around. You know, I said slowly, you're all probably right. Maybe I should sell. The relief in the room was palpable. Jennifer actually smiled. I think that's very wise, Mom, Michael said. And we'll help you find something suitable, something more appropriate. As if the home where I'd been happy for 40 years was somehow unseemly for a woman my age. After dinner, I overheard Sarah talking to Jennifer in the kitchen. Thank God she's finally being reasonable. I was so tired of the constant financial drama. I know, Jennifer replied. And honestly, that house is way too much for her anyway. She'll be much better off somewhere smaller. I slipped out without saying goodbye. That night, I sat in my kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd cooked countless meals for these ungrateful people and planned my next move. If they wanted to see me as a burden, I'd show them what a real burden looked like. But I was also beginning to realize something else. This little test was revealing more than just their greed. It was showing me how little they thought of my intelligence, my competence, my right to make my own decisions. So, I started small. First, I accidentally bounced a check at the grocery store and had to call Michael for help. He sighed heavily. Mom, why can't you just be more careful with your account balance? Then, I showed up at Jennifer's house, claiming my car wouldn't start and I needed a ride to the doctor. Mom, this is exactly what we've been talking about, she said as she grudgingly drove me across town. You're becoming too dependent. What happens when we're not available to drop everything and help you? The beautiful irony was that I'd never been less dependent in my life. I had $33 million earning interest in a secure account. But there I was, pretending to need my children for basic survival. The real test came when I called Michael, claiming I'd fallen in my kitchen and hurt my back, not seriously injured, I assured him. But enough that I'm scared to be alone. Could I please stay with you for a few days? The silence on the phone was deafening. Double quotes, Mom, this really isn't a good time, he finally said. Sarah's mother is visiting next week and we just don't have the space. I could sleep on the couch, I said, making my voice small and pathetic. That's not appropriate for someone your age with a back injury. Look, why don't I call Dr. Peterson and see if he can prescribe something for the pain? He wanted to medicate me rather than let me stay in his guest room. The same guest room that had hosted Sarah's college friends. Their neighbors from out of town, even their dog groomer when she was between apartments. Never mind, I said quietly. I'll manage. Mom, don't be dramatic. You'll be fine. You're tougher than you think. Tough, right? I was tough enough to raise two children as a working single mother after their father walked out. Tough enough to work double shifts as a nurse to pay for their college educations. Tough enough to care for my dying husband while still maintaining a household. But God forbid I need a place to sleep when I'm hurt. That evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mrs. Henderson from next door holding a casserole dish. Carol. Honey, I saw your car in the driveway all day and got worried. Are you feeling all right? Without thinking, I told her about my supposed fall and back pain. Her face immediately filled with genuine concern. Oh my goodness, you shouldn't be alone. Come stay with Harold and me until you're feeling better. We have that day bed in the sunroom, it's perfectly comfortable. I stared at this woman, someone I barely knew beyond friendly waves and exchanged holiday cookies, who was offering me exactly what my own children had refused. That's very kind, I said softly. But I couldn't impose. Nonsense, she said. Harold will come help you pack a bag right now. Family takes care of family, and you've been like family to us since Tom passed. As Harold Henderson helped me carry an overnight bag to their house, I realized something profound. These virtual strangers had shown me more care and concern in one evening than my own children had in months, but I was about to discover that the Hendersons' kindness was nothing compared to what was coming next. It was Mrs. Henderson who answered the phone. When Jennifer finally called the next evening, wondering why I wasn't picking up at home, I listened from the sunroom as Mrs. Henderson explained that I was staying with them. Because of my injury. Staying with you? Jennifer's voice was loud enough for me to hear across the room. Why would she do that? Because the poor dear was hurt and alone, Mrs. Henderson said, her tone firm, the kind of steel that comes from raising 6 children. Her family wasn't available to help. There was a pause. Then Jennifer said, well, we appreciate you looking after her. But she really should have called us first. She did call, Mrs. Henderson replied coolly. Apparently, it wasn't convenient. After she hung up, Mrs. Henderson came into the sunroom shaking her head. That daughter of yours sounded more annoyed than concerned. Are you sure she understood that you were hurt? Oh, she understood, I said bitterly. Well, you just stay here as long as you need to, she said firmly. Harold and I enjoy the company, and they did, for 3 days. They fussed over me like I was their own daughter. Mrs. Henderson made my favorite soup without me even asking. Harold fixed the wobbly leg on my kitchen table that I'd mentioned in passing. They included me in their evening crossword puzzle ritual and listened with genuine interest when I talked about Tom or my nursing career on the 3rd day. As I was helping Mrs. Henderson with the dishes, despite her protests about my injured back, I found myself fighting tears. What's wrong, dear? She asked immediately. Nothing's wrong. That's just it, I said softly. I can't remember the last time anyone took care of me like this. Made me feel like I mattered. Mrs. Henderson set down her dish towel and turned to face me fully. Carol, I don't know what's going on with your children, she said gently, but I want you to know something. You matter. You matter to Harold and me, and you should matter to them. That evening, Jennifer finally showed up. She stood in the Hendersons' living room, looking around with barely concealed disapproval, as if the comfortable, lived-in furniture somehow offended her. Mom, this has gone on long enough. You need to come home. Actually, I've been very comfortable here, I said from my spot on the couch, where Harold and I had been watching the evening news. It's inappropriate for you to impose on the neighbors like this, Jennifer snapped. Mrs. Henderson stood up from her chair, all 5 feet of her radiating pure maternal fury. Now you listen here, young lady, she said sharply. Your mother isn't imposing on anyone. She's been a delightful guest, and she's welcome to stay as long as she likes. Jennifer's face flushed. With all due respect, Mrs. Henderson, this is a family matter. You're absolutely right. Mrs. Henderson shot back. It is a family matter. The question is, why wasn't her family here when she needed them? The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my daughter struggle to find an answer that wouldn't make her look exactly like what she was, a selfish woman who couldn't be bothered to care for her injured mother. We had obligations, Jennifer finally said weakly. So did we, Harold said quietly from his chair. But some things are more important than obligations. Jennifer left without another word, but not before giving me a look. That promised we'd be having words later. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices in the kitchen. Mrs. Henderson was talking to someone, and I heard a man's voice responding. When I came out of the sunroom, I found a stranger sitting at their kitchen table, a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit, who immediately stood when he saw me. Double quotes Mrs. Patterson. He said, "My name is David Harrison. I'm an attorney and I believe we need to talk." David Harrison had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of calm presence that made you feel like everything was going to be all right. He also had news that was about to turn my little test completely upside down. "Mrs. Patterson, I represent the estate of Margaret Fleming. I believe you knew her as Maggie Fleming. She worked with you at St. Mary's Hospital." My heart stopped. Maggie, my dear friend and mentor from my early nursing days, who had died 6 months ago. I'd been unable to attend her funeral because Jennifer had insisted I accompany her to some work function instead. "Yes," I said softly. "I knew Maggie. She was wonderful, but I don't understand why you're here." David smiled gently. "Maggie left you something in her will. She spoke of you often in her final years. Said you were like the daughter she never had. She wanted to make sure you were taken care of." Double quotes Mrs. Henderson gasped. "How wonderful. What kind of something?" I asked, though my mind was already racing. This could complicate my lottery test in ways I hadn't anticipated. David opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. $250,000 and her house in Clearwater, Florida, fully paid for. A beautiful little place near the beach where she had retired. She said she remembered you always talking about wanting to live by the ocean someday. David explained. I stared at him, speechless. This was impossible. Just when I thought I had life figured out, when I was testing my family's true feelings, the universe was throwing me another curveball. "There's more," David continued. "Maggie left specific instructions that this inheritance was to be kept confidential until after her estate was settled. She was concerned about people treating you differently if they knew too soon. She said something about wanting you to see people's true colors first, even from beyond the grave. Maggie was protecting me and giving me an opportunity I hadn't expected." "When would I need to decide about the house?" I asked. "There's no rush. You could visit first, see if it suits you, or sell it if you prefer. It's worth quite a bit in today's market." "But Mrs. Patterson, there's something else. Something Maggie insisted I tell you personally." He leaned forward, his expression serious. She said, "If anyone in your family tries to pressure you about this inheritance, tries to make decisions for you, or treats you like you can't handle your own affairs, remember, you have options. You don't owe anyone access to information about your finances, and you certainly don't owe anyone control over your life choices." Mrs. Henderson reached over and squeezed my hand. That Maggie was a smart woman. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Mom, we need to talk about your living situation. Can you meet us for lunch tomorrow? Time to make some decisions." I showed the text to David, who raised an eyebrow. "Interesting timing. What do you think Maggie would say about that?" I thought about my dear friend who had worked until she was 75, not because she had to, but because she loved what she did, who had traveled to 6 continents after retirement, who had never let anyone tell her she was too old, too frail, or too much of a burden. She'd say, "It's time to stop letting other people make decisions about my life," I said quietly. "And what do you say?" I looked around Mrs. Henderson's warm kitchen, thought about the lottery ticket that had started this whole charade, considered Maggie's final gift, and felt something shift inside me. My test was about to become something much bigger. I decided it was time for my family to learn some truths. But maybe not all of them. "Not yet," David smiled. "Now, that sounds like something Maggie would approve of. Should I arrange for the paperwork to transfer the house deed?" As I nodded, I was already planning exactly how tomorrow's lunch was going to go. My children thought they were meeting with a desperate, dependent old woman who needed their guidance. Instead, they were about to meet someone with options they couldn't even imagine. But I was going to save my biggest surprise for when I really needed it. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early and chose a table by the window where everyone could see us. When Michael and Jennifer walked in, their spouses trailing behind, they looked like a delegation coming to deliver an ultimatum. "Perfect, Mom. Thanks for meeting us," Michael said as they settled into their chairs. "We've been discussing your situation and we think it's time for some tough decisions." I sipped my iced tea calmly. "What kind of decisions?" Sarah opened a folder she'd brought. "We've researched several senior communities in the area. Some really lovely places with activities and meal plans. Much more suitable than rattling around in that big house alone. The Henderson situation made us realize how vulnerable you are," Jennifer added. "What if something serious had happened? What if they hadn't been home?" I nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely right. I could have been in real trouble, but before we go any further, there's something I need to tell you all. Michael leaned forward expectantly, probably thinking I was about to confess to more financial problems. I inherited some money, I said simply. Sarah blinked. Inherited? From whom? My friend Maggie Fleming. She left me her house in Florida and $250,000. The silence at the table was deafening. I could practically hear their mental calculators whirring. $250,000? Jennifer repeated slowly. Plus the house. It's worth about $300,000 according to the market assessment. Michael's face cycled through confusion, relief, and something that looked suspiciously like calculation. Mom, that's wonderful, but this changes everything. You need professional guidance now. Professional guidance? I echoed. Yes. Sarah jumped in quickly. Financial advisors, estate planners, people who understand how to protect assets. You could be a target for scammers. Jennifer nodded vigorously. Mom, with that kind of money, you need to be very careful about the decisions you make. Maybe we should all meet with a lawyer together. I watched their faces transform. 24 hours ago, I was a burden who needed to be managed. Now, suddenly, I was a vulnerable senior who needed their protection. I'm thinking about moving to Florida, I said quietly. Moving? Michael's voice went sharp. Mom, that's exactly the kind of impulsive decision we're worried about. You can't just uproot your entire life because you inherited some money. It's not impulsive. I've always wanted to live near the ocean, but you don't know anyone there, Jennifer protested. What if something happened to you? What if you got sick? Greg leaned forward. Plus, there are legal implications. Florida has different estate laws. You'd need to transfer everything properly, set up new banking relationships. It's complicated. I noticed how quickly the conversation had shifted from my well-being to legal and financial. Logistics, interesting. I have time to figure it out, I said calmly. Do you, though? Sarah asked. These inheritance situations have deadlines, tax implications. You really shouldn't make any major decisions without consulting us first. Us? I repeated, incredulous, as if my inheritance required group approval. Michael reached across the table and patted my hand. Mom, we just want to make sure you're protected. Why don't you give us power of attorney just temporarily, until we can get all the professional advice lined up? There it was. The first real move. Power of attorney. I kept my voice neutral. Just to help with the paperwork, Jennifer added quickly. You know how complicated these financial things can be. We could handle all the boring legal stuff so you don't have to worry about it. I looked around the table at their carefully concerned faces. Such devoted children, wanting to protect me from the burden of managing my own inheritance. That's very thoughtful, I said, standing up. Let me think about it. Mom, don't take too long. Michael warned, these things have time-sensitive elements. As I walked to my car, I could hear them talking animatedly through the restaurant window, planning my protection. No doubt. 3 days later, Jennifer showed up at my door with a man in an expensive suit and a briefcase full of papers. Mom, this is Richard Caldwell. He's an elder law attorney who specializes in estate protection. I thought you should meet him. I invited them in, curious to see how far this would go. Double quotes Mrs. Patterson. Richard said with practiced warmth, your daughter is wise to seek professional guidance. Sudden wealth can be overwhelming, especially for seniors. I'm managing fine so far, I said. Of course you are, he replied, but there are pitfalls you might not be aware of. Scammers, investment schemes, even well-meaning friends who might take advantage. He opened his briefcase. I've drawn up some basic protection documents. Nothing major, just safeguards. Jennifer sat beside me on the couch. Mom, she said. Richard will explain how people target recent inheritors, especially older women living alone. What kind of safeguards? I asked. Richard spread papers across my coffee table. Irrevocable trust to protect the assets, updated power of attorney documents, medical directives, standard protection for someone in your situation, my situation. There it was again. And who would manage this trust? I asked. Well, typically family members serve as trustees. Your daughter and son could handle the day-to-day management while you retain full benefits and control. I picked up one of the documents, scanning the legal language. Buried in the third paragraph was language that would essentially give Michael and Jennifer control over all major financial decisions. This is very thorough, I said, but there's something else I should probably mention. Jennifer and Richard both leaned forward, curiosity and concern written across their faces. The inheritance isn't my only recent windfall. I reached into my purse and pulled out the lottery ticket. Setting it carefully on the coffee table next to Richard's papers, I also won the lottery. $33 million. The silence was deafening. Richard's pen stopped moving mid-sentence. Jennifer's face went completely white. $33 million, Jennifer whispered, after taxes. About $21 million, give or take, I added calmly. Richard recovered first. His lawyer instincts kicking in. Mrs. Patterson, this significantly changes your protection needs. With assets of this magnitude, you absolutely cannot make any decisions without proper legal and financial guidance, Mom. Jennifer's voice shook. Why didn't you tell us about this before? I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I was broke versus when you thought I had money. Interesting how quickly your concern for my competence appeared once dollars were involved. Richard shuffled his papers nervously. Mrs. Patterson, I understand you might feel overwhelmed, but these assets require immediate protection. We're talking about generational wealth here. My generation seems to be managing just fine. I said evenly. Jennifer stood up abruptly. Mom, you can't be serious about handling this alone. Do you have any idea what kind of responsibility this is? I have some idea. I've been managing my own finances for 67 years. This is different? Jennifer's composure was cracking. This is life-changing money. You could lose everything if you make the wrong decisions. Richard nodded gravely. Your daughter is absolutely right. Without proper management, assets of this size can disappear very quickly, especially if the holder lacks experience with complex financial instruments. I looked at these two people, one who'd known me for 40 years, another who'd met me 10 minutes ago, both convinced I was incompetent to manage my own money. I think I need some time to consider all this, I said finally. Time is exactly what you don't have, Richard said urgently. Every day these assets remain unprotected is a day they're at risk. Jennifer grabbed my hands. Mom, please let us help you. We just want what's best for you. After they left, I sat in my living room staring at the business card Richard had pressed into my hand. On the back, in red ink, he'd written urgent. Call immediately. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Jennifer told me about the lottery. We need to meet ASAP. This changes everything. No kidding, Michael, I muttered. This changed everything. The next morning, I woke up to find Michael sitting in my kitchen. He'd used his old emergency key. Mom, we need to talk now. I poured myself coffee, noting how he'd made himself at home. Good morning to you, too. Do you have any idea what you've done? Going around telling people about this lottery win. I thought you'd be happy for me, I said. Happy? Michael laughed bitterly. Mom, by next week this will be all over town. You'll have every scammer, every long-lost relative, every sob story within 50 miles showing up at your door. Then maybe I should move to Florida sooner rather than later, I said. That's exactly the kind of thinking that proves you need supervision, Michael snapped, pulling out his phone. I've been doing research all night. Do you know what happens to lottery winners who don't have proper guidance? 70% go bankrupt within 5 years. I'm not going bankrupt, Michael. How do you know? Have you ever managed $21 million before? Do you understand tax shelters, investment portfolios, estate planning? I understand that it's my money. It's family money, Mom. This affects all of us. Emma's college fund, Tommy's future, Jennifer's kids. You can't just run off to Florida and pretend this only affects you. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Are you saying my money belongs to the family? I'm saying you have responsibilities to us, to your grandchildren. Money like this comes with obligations. What kind of obligations? I asked. Narrowing my eyes, Michael pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed before. I've scheduled meetings with 3 financial advisory firms this week, top-tier places that handle high net worth clients. And I've made an appointment with Dr. Morrison for a cognitive assessment. A what? A cognitive assessment to establish baseline mental capacity. It's standard procedure for anyone managing significant assets, protects everyone involved. I stared at my son. You want me to take a mental competency test? I want to protect you from making decisions you might regret later, Mom. You're talking about moving across the country, abandoning your support system, making major life changes. These are classic signs of poor judgment in elderly inheritance recipients. Elderly inheritance recipients, it's a documented phenomenon, Richard had said. Sudden wealth syndrome, it can cause erratic behavior, especially in seniors. My phone rang. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. Put it on speaker, Michael said. I answered normally. Hello, sweetheart. Mom, thank God you're there. I've been so worried. Listen, I spoke to Richard last night and he's very concerned about your exposure right now. My exposure? I asked. Legal exposure, financial exposure, Mom. People are going to start coming out of the woodwork. We need to establish protective measures immediately. Michael leaned forward. Tell her about the guardianship option. My blood ran cold. Guardianship? It's just a precaution, Jennifer said quickly. Richard explained that with assets this large, if there's any question about cognitive capacity, the court could appoint a stranger to manage your affairs. But if we establish voluntary guardianship now with family members, You'd maintain much more control. Voluntary guardianship means you're still in charge. Michael added, we just handle the day-to-day financial management. You'd have full access to funds for your needs. What if I don't want voluntary guardianship? Silence on the phone. Michael's jaw tightened. Mom, Jennifer's voice softened. We're just trying to protect you. If you refuse reasonable protection measures, it might raise questions about your judgment. What kind of questions? The kind that lead to involuntary court proceedings. Michael said bluntly, Mom, we're offering you the easy way, the family way. But if you insist on being unreasonable, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. That afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Emma, my 16-year-old granddaughter, standing on my porch with tears in her eyes. Grandma, is it true? Are you really moving to Florida? Behind her, I could see Jennifer sitting in her car watching. I'm considering it, sweetheart. Why? Mom says if you move, we might not see you anymore. She says Florida is really far and you might forget about us. I knelt down to Emma's level. Honey, I could never forget about you. Florida isn't on Mars. There are planes, video calls, but Mom says it's not the same. She's been crying all morning. She says you're abandoning the family. I looked over at Jennifer, still sitting in her car like a puppet master pulling strings. Emma, would you like to come in for some cookies? I can't. Mom says we need to get home, but Grandma. Emma hugged me tightly. Please don't leave us. We need you here. As they drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Emma's just the first. Tommy's asking questions, too. Is this really how you want to break up the family? An hour later, my brother Robert called. Carol, what's this? I hear about you moving to Florida. Michael called me. Says you've come into some money and you're making rash decisions. Hello to you, too, Robert. He's worried about you. Says you're not thinking clearly. Maybe you should listen to your children. Did Michael tell you how much money I inherited? I asked. He mentioned it was substantial. Look, Carol, I know you're still grieving Tom, but running away isn't the answer. I'm not running away. Then what would you call it? Michael says you won't even consider their help with managing this inheritance. That doesn't sound like the sensible sister I know. After I hung up, I realized what was happening. Michael and Jennifer were building a narrative: eccentric widow, unexpected wealth, irrational behavior, family concern. They were creating the foundation for a legal challenge to my competency. My phone rang again. David Harrison's number. Double quotes, Mrs. Patterson, I hope you don't mind me calling. I had an interesting conversation today with a Richard Caldwell. He was asking questions about the Fleming estate. Wanted to verify the inheritance details. What kind of questions? I asked, my stomach dropping. Timeline questions. When you first learned about the inheritance, whether there were any signs of cognitive decline that might have influenced Mrs. Fleming's decision to leave you assets. What did you tell him? I told him attorney-client privilege prevented me from discussing my observations about your mental state during our meetings. But Mrs. Patterson, I think you should know, he also asked about the time frame for transferring the Florida property. He seemed very interested in whether there were any deadlines that might pressure you into quick decisions. David, if someone wanted to challenge my competency, how would they do it? I asked. They'd need evidence of impaired judgment, he said. Medical documentation, preferably, and testimony from family members about concerning behavior. Then they'd petition the court for guardianship proceedings. How long would that take? Emergency guardianship can be granted in 48 hours. If there's evidence of immediate risk to the person or their assets. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen doing math. It was Wednesday afternoon. If Michael and Jennifer filed emergency guardianship papers claiming I was about to move across the country with millions in assets, while showing signs of cognitive decline, they could have legal control over my life by Friday. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Mom, we've scheduled the appointment with Dr. Morrison for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please don't miss it. We're all just trying to help. I looked around my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd been happy for 40 years at the life my children suddenly wanted to control and manage. Then I walked upstairs, opened my closet, and started packing. At 6 a.m. Thursday morning, I called David Harrison. David, I need to get to Florida immediately. Can you meet me at the airport with papers to transfer the house deed? Mrs. Patterson, what's wrong? My family is filing for emergency guardianship. I have maybe 24 hours before I lose control of my own life. Dear God, he said. Okay, I can have the papers ready by noon. But are you sure about this? Once you're a Florida resident, it complicates any guardianship proceedings they might file in your home state. That's exactly why I need to go. What about your house here? I'll deal with it later. Right now, I need to establish residency somewhere they can't touch me. I threw essentials into 2 suitcases, grabbed my important documents, and loaded the car. As I was putting the last bag in the trunk, Mrs. Henderson appeared at my side. Carol, honey, where are you going so early? I almost broke down right there. This dear woman had shown me more kindness than my own children. I have to leave, Eleanor. My family is trying to take control of my finances. They think I'm not competent to manage my own life. Her face hardened. Those ungrateful children. After everything you've done for them, if they come looking for me, you don't know where I went. Okay, you have my word. But Carol, she squeezed my hand, you call me when you get settled. Harold and I will worry, I will. And Eleanor. Thank you for everything. At the airport, David was waiting with a thick folder of documents. Everything's ready, he said. House deed, utility transfers, even voter registration. Sign these and you're officially a Florida resident. As I signed paper after paper, my phone kept buzzing, text after text from Michael and Jennifer. Mom, where are you? You missed your appointment with Dr. Morrison. Your car isn't in the driveway. Please call us. Mom, we're getting worried. We're going to call the police if we don't hear from you. Then my phone rang. Michael's number. Mom, where the hell are you? I'm fine, Michael, don't give me that. You missed your appointment. Your car's gone. Mrs. Henderson claims she doesn't know where you are. I'm in Florida. Silence. Then Florida? Yes, Florida. Mom, you can't just run away like this. I'm not running away. I'm moving to my new house. This is exactly the kind of erratic behavior we were worried about. You can't make major life decisions on impulse. It's not an impulse. I've been planning this. We're filing the guardianship petition this afternoon, Michael snapped. Jennifer's voice came through on speaker. Mom, you're clearly not thinking rationally. File whatever you want, I said calmly. I'm a Florida resident now. Good luck with your jurisdiction. You can't hide from family, Mom, Michael said angrily. We'll fight this, you do that, I replied. But you'll be fighting it without access to my money. And you'll be fighting it while I'm living in my beach house, making my own decisions. Mom, please. Jennifer's voice cracked. We love you. We're just trying to help. If you loved me, I said quietly, you would have helped when I asked for $2,000. If you loved me, you would have let me stay in your guest room when I was hurt. But you didn't love me then, you just love my money now. I hung up and turned off my phone. 6 hours later, I was sitting on the back porch of Maggie's house, my house, watching the Gulf of Mexico turn gold in the sunset. My phone, still switched off, rested on the table beside a glass of wine and the lottery ticket that had started this whole adventure. I had tested my family and learned exactly who they were. I'd discovered that strangers could show more kindness than blood relatives. I'd found out that I was stronger and braver than I'd ever imagined, but most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the most valuable thing money can buy isn't a house or a car or even security. Sometimes it's freedom, the freedom to walk away from people who see you as a problem to be managed, instead of a person to be respected. My new neighbor knocked on the fence gate. Mrs. Patterson? I'm Dale from next door. Welcome to the neighborhood. My wife made you a casserole for your first night. I smiled and waved him over. Please, call me Carol, and thank you, that's very kind. As we chatted about the neighborhood, the best grocery stores, and the walking paths along the beach, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the exhausted kind of peace that comes after a fight, but the deep, settled peace of being exactly where you belong. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen to other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.